Welcome to our Frontline Voices series, Inside the Fight for the Jewish People. This is part of the HaEmet initiative. HaEmet means truth in Hebrew, what we all wish to be striving towards. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us today. It means the world to me. 2 years and 2 days ago, the Jewish people experienced their worst day since the Holocaust. To help us understand what happened that day, what's happened since, and what is to be done now, we've got two guests who have devoted their lives to making the world a better, safer place for Jews, and therefore everyone. Eitan, Chitayat, and Leyb, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, of course. Before we begin, I'd like to share we'll have a Q&A for the last 20 minutes. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout the discussion, and we'll call on you at the end. Introducing Eitan, the founder of I'm That Jew, a global movement empowering Jews everywhere to proudly embrace their identity. I choose to do it by wearing a kippah now. Eitan, thank you. Through storytelling, media, and community building, he's built a united, visible Jewish future. Since October 7th, he's focused his creative energy on reclaiming the Jewish narrative and fighting anti-Semitism worldwide. His work has reached over 200,000 followers and nearly 300 million views. Beyond advocacy, Eitan is a seasoned branding expert with almost 30 years of experience working with top global brands from his agency in Tel Aviv. Introducing Noy, he is a Canadian-Israeli entrepreneur and IDF's reservist. On October 7th, he immediately flew to Israel and served over 300 days on the front lines in Gaza fighting Hamas and Lebanon fighting Hezbollah with his elite commando unit. Since then, he has dedicated his life to Jewish advocacy, leading strong voices for Israel. Through this work, he brings IDF soldiers and survivors of October 7th to communities across North America, educating and equipping audiences to fight anti-Semitism and misinformation. With over 50,000 followers online, Noy continues to raise awareness while preparing to return to active duty. Wow. Two things I couldn't have done myself. One, drop the company or cut it to 5% from 100%, 90%, and two, putting on a uniform. Noy, you did both. So kol hakavod for what you've done in the last 2 years, and I know you've been advocates for longer. So any rate, to begin, boy, don't we have some kind of an interesting development since our session yesterday, right? What's to make of that? Did the war just end?
No.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Okay. I think Eitan and I mean, we live in Israel, but I think, the outside world is seeing all the news. It's okay, great, the war is ending, the hostages are going to come home, and that's it. But as someone who lives here, and I think Eitan can agree, Hamas isn't going away. The Palestinian perspective isn't going away. Eitan and I didn't become advocates on October 7th or October 8th. We've been doing this for much longer. And for immediately, we don't know if the hostages are going to come home. We're praying that they are. We hope that they are. But we know Hamas, we know that they're unpredictable. But for the bigger issue, we still have enemies. Iran wants to get rid of us. Hamas will try to rebuild in another way. And if it's not Hamas, it'll be someone else. But, the war isn't over yet, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's actually interesting.
Thank you for that realistic perspective. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
I completely agree with Noy, and I'll add one other thing, which is actually I just put up a post right now. There was a screaming university professor in Sydney that just started attacking Jewish women who were on the campus celebrating Sukkot. And in the post that I put up, I showed the video, and I actually addressed that I don't want to be the party poop. I don't want to spoil the mood. But while everyone is celebrating and we're hopeful, the war will continue, and we all need to be prepared. And it's actually very tied to what hopefully we're talking about today, which is the narrative war. The narrative war is not someone will deal with it. The narrative war is, in addition to the security of the state of Israel and the security of the Jewish people, the narrative war is at the foundation of where we can invest in energy, time, resources because it's only going to get worse if we don't invest in making it right with storytelling, narrative, putting our words out there, putting our identity out there, and challenging people. So it's far from over. You could say it's only just beginning. But let them come home.
Eitan, yeah, let them come home. Let them come home. And maybe by Simchas Torah, on the Jewish calendar, the 2-year anniversary of, of this. Tell us, how do you expect us to do this, Eitan? What do you want all of us to do as expressing our narrative?
Sure. Well, maybe this is a good segue into I can just introduce myself. I know you introduced me so well, and thank you, Ben, for introducing. Thank you for making this happen and for your fight. It goes to show that you can do anything wherever you are. The way that we need to approach this is, of course, there is a military war, but far before military wars occur, there are narrative wars. Israel and the Jewish people failed catastrophically at the narrative war. I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about the last few decades, where we have not invested in seriously the spoken word and people showing up to speak the spoken word, so that the middle ground, which we have lost, it seems for now, understand the truth. You cannot wait, just like our Palestinian neighbors did not wait. They were at this decades ago with vision to target certain audiences, to be funded well, and to be consistent, so that it could get to this stage where there's a tipping point. So now, because we never took it seriously, we need to start taking it seriously. I don't believe that it's something that the government can do in Israel, and I also don't think it's for only the government of Israel to do. I think it's on the private sector and real professionals, real advocates, people who are doing the work like Noy and myself and some other people are doing. We need to start making sure that people understand just how important it is to invest in the truth, and not to just wait for some people to do it, and not for it to just expect it to happen, and not to think that it's not important. It's important to show up, to inspire people to show up, to build bridges with our allies. And you can only do that by investing in vision, energy, funding, and consistency. You can only make a change by doing that. And while it's an uphill struggle, and I'll finish with this for now and hand it over to Noy, while it's an uphill struggle, it is possible. We just need to do it. And I'm hoping that you agree.
I
Yeah,
agree. I can tell you
of
that
course.
the bigger crowd here. I'll just add on one thing to that, and we can get rolling, Ben. Um, I wish the Israeli government could do this job. I wish that we could all live our normal lives, and while us, Jews and allies are very good at some things, while the Jews are good at many, many things, PR and sports are basically two things that we're bad at. Um, there are people like Eitan and myself who've just taken it upon themselves before October 7th, but specifically since October 7th, to go and do the job. We know the issues, we know what works, we know what doesn't, and we're looking to grow. Like, this is what we're dedicating our full time to. So excited to be here, but I'll pass it to you, Ben, so we can get rolling.
Great. I wanted to just show some examples of some of the things we put out there. Noy, why don't I start with your clip, and we'll just share with the audience kind of some of the audio visuals that you guys put together.
Sounds good.
Israel at war. Dozens of Hamas terrorists infiltrating into Israel this morning.
On October 7th, we dropped everything and went to the front lines. We fought in Gaza. We faced one of the hardest moments of our lives. This war is about protecting our families, our people, and our future. But when we came back home, we faced something we never expected. Protests calling for the destruction of Israel. Hatred on our streets. And anti-Semitism on our campuses.
Jewish students attacked at DePaul University are speaking out and taking a stand against hate.
That's when we decided to do something.
Speak out.
To share our stories. To partner with our allies.
Amen.
A world without Israel is a world without Jews.
Strong Voices for Israel brings you frontline stories. Soldiers who fought in Gaza.
2 days later, I was in uniform in Israel, ready to fight Hamas.
Survivors of October 7th.
I heard from the tent the missiles.
And students who faced anti-Semitism on campus.
Horrendous assault, and it was clear that we were Jewish.
We go where you are, and we're more than just a speakers bureau. After our speaking engagements, we leave audiences with clear, practical ways to stay informed, engaged, and actively stand with Israel. Want to hear our stories? Invite us today. Strong Voices for Israel, strengthening allyship to create a stronger and safer world.
Wow, that was beautiful. No, well done on that. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, or whether it's something like that or in the field, so to speak?
Sure. So on October 7th, I got called up to the army. I was in Gaza for 4 months, and what I wanted to do was go and tell my story. We have Carlos on this call who was speaking earlier. Like, for me, that therapy was going and speaking to audiences, telling them my story, telling them the truth, the good and the bad. And it worked well, but I realized that I was only speaking to the Jewish community, which is very small and supportive and not as confrontational. And I went back to the army for another round of reserve duty. But when I got out the next time, I realized that there is a huge population, the non-Jewish community, that needs to hear our stories. So I started speaking. I went to churches, and I founded, the organization that I have right now. And I realized that speaking to these people, creating allyship, is one of the ways to strengthen our name. It's what the other side, the Palestinian anti-Israel groups, have been doing for many, many years. And when I go to schools and see the Christian students that I speak to join forces with the Jewish students, it's one of the best things that I've ever seen. And that's what I'm solely focused on right now, is strengthening the allyship by going through schools, churches, universities, and at the end, bringing the non-Jews and the Jews together to fight on the right side.
That's like a noble purpose. What would you say? You mentioned Christian communities. I've had the same experience with Christian communities. How do we do the same with Muslim communities?
That's a good question. Baby steps. I think that the issue that I've faced with Muslim communities is that they're okay with talking to me. They're okay with listening to me, and they're okay with having me bring in a speaker that's an IDF soldier or a Norvus survivor or even a second generation Holocaust survivor. The issue there is that they don't want other people to see that they're speaking to me. So it's either done in very small, secretive communities, even though they all, not all of them, but many of them will want to engage in dialogue, whether they agree or not. I'm starting out with the Christians. It's a bit of a lighter lift, to be honest, not always easy. But we'll get to the Muslims one day.
I do it with every Uber drive in Chicago.
Yes, New York too.
Right. Let me see here. Most Jewish advocacy still, as you mentioned, only speaks to Jews. You, with Strong Voices for Israel, you've taken it outside. What kind of feedback are you hearing from those groups, and how is it changing the conversation about Israel?
Yeah, so when I started this, I didn't know what to expect, and I think the feedback has been super powerful. When I go to a church or a specifically Christian school, not a school where I go through Chabad or Hillel, when I go specifically to Christians, I meet people across all the spectrum. Many teenagers or many university students have seen what they saw on TikTok or on Instagram, and they believe what they believe because that's what they saw. But all of a sudden, what they've seen online doesn't really match up with what they see in person. So they'll expect to see politics and hear politics, and all of a sudden they receive humanity. And humanizing that conversation, humanizing the war, as weird as it sounds, is what helps me. So, and I'm not saying I go into these schools and change their minds, 180 degrees. But what's consistent is the shift. And the shift I'm speaking about is confusion. When our soldiers, when our survivors, when our speakers go into these places and all of a sudden confuse the person that they're speaking to, they're saying, wait a second, maybe it really doesn't make sense that 200,000 Palestinians have died in the conflict. Why am I listening to the Gaza Bureau of Statistics, which is actually Hamas? They start questioning themselves, and that's where the real change begins. I think that what we're doing here, there's like a social media part, and then there's the on the ground part, which means going to universities, going to schools, going to conferences. And then we have the training part where we're not only training allies on how to speak up for Israel, we're also training Jews on how to work with allies to speak up for Israel. So all this comes full circle, and it creates the change that I'm working on. It creates the change that Eitan is working on in his way. And it's something that works that other people aren't really doing. I haven't seen it.
So, I'm sure there's not a lot of people out there doing what you're doing. No. What kind of, when it comes to having a measurable impact, what would you say Strong Voices of Israel has done so far?
So I've been in Miluim, in reserve duty, basically for half of this war. But when I've been out, and what we've been doing since the beginning of the year in January, we've trained 15 speakers with a woman that Carlos, I think he knows, who's an expert in communication. We don't just go and send whoever it is. So that's number one. We've had 63 speaking engagements across our 15 speakers since the beginning of the year. We've reached over 10,000 people in person, not just on social media. And out of those 63 speaking engagements, 22 of those were first-time communities, people who didn't know much about October 7th, people who had driven 2.5 hours just to see our speaker because they heard he was an IDF soldier and wanted to hear more. We've also slowly been building partnerships with different organizations because I believe that, partnerships are really worth it. And we've been in the media, on different media 21 times. But I think that at the end of the day, these numbers are great, but the ripple effect is what surprises me most. When I all of a sudden hear from a church that right now, they're not just praying for us, but once a month or once a week, they're learning about Israel and asking us questions and asking us for different definition sheets and having a WhatsApp group. Like, for me, that's how I know that we're making a difference here.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to turn now to Eitan. I'd like to show a little bit of your work, Eitan. You recently did an amazing trip to Australia, where there's just my Australian Jewish friends are looking to move from Australia because there's just so much
Yeah.
so much
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Australia was, I came back around a month and a half ago. Just in Australia, we met 6,000 people, 25 events in 3 weeks, boardrooms, synagogues, big halls, universities, primary schools, kindergartens. And the overwhelming feeling when I got there was despair and lack of hope. This was at the time, of course, not so long ago, when there was the big demonstration over the bridge in Sydney Harbour, and the Jewish people of Australia, not like in many places in the rest of the world, where it's been something that people have been learning to live with. It was overnight the Australian Jewish community felt abandoned and betrayed by leadership and by their communities. What I'm happy to say is by the time I left, the impact was felt, and I gave a good kick in the ass, if you excuse the language, of the Jewish community that needed it to galvanize and to rise up together and to start fighting back. And that's really the purpose of I'm That Jew. But sure, please go ahead and roll the short piece, and I'm happy to talk about what we're trying to do as well.
Awesome. Franca, go ahead.
I came to Australia from Israel, where days before I flew, I was still running to bomb shelters. I spent time in Sydney, the Opera House, the harbour, walking Bondi along the sea, watching people go by and koalas sleeping, feeding kangaroos and wallabies. I had open conversations with my Jewish family in boardrooms, synagogues, schools, homes, and community centres, and have felt their strength even when they haven't felt their strength. I met with university students at Orgeous events, talked with high schoolers at Moriah College, shared a whirlwind day in Melbourne with the students of Scopus who filled me with pride, purpose, and hope. I spent time with the parents' associations from 5 Melbourne schools who came together as one. I joined the Shabbaton for just a few hours in Adelaide, met the Jewish community in Perth, and felt their fire. I even joined Iranians fighting for their country's freedom from afar. And everywhere, warmth. Hugs from strangers that didn't feel strange. Old friends, new friends, brothers, sisters, and beautiful allies. Shabbat dinners in beautiful homes with beautiful people. Open conversations with random Muslim, Indian, and Christian Australians I openly spoke to who, while not Jewish, cared deeply when we spoke and wanted to learn more about us. I came to give all I've got, but I've been filled up. I've carried Israel with me, and I'm leaving with Australia in my heart. This country may be 1,000,000 miles away, but when you're with your people, you're close. You're right there with them. They're your family, and you're theirs too. So to every Jew around the world, wherever you are, you're not alone. You've got your peeps. And when we show up and come together in real life, we are an unstoppable force, despite what the media shows. Australian Jewish community, know that, and keep showing up exactly as you are. Thank you for this experience, and thank you for inspiring me. It's all of us together. G'day.
Beautiful. Very nice. Very nice. Tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, Eitan.
Sure. Well, I mean, you opened up by talking about me being a brand builder, and that's really what I've been doing for the last 30 years, working with companies like Apple and Google, Facebook in London, launching Gmail in Africa. And branding is at the heart of what I do. And I think that the day after October 7th, we were exposed to the very, very painful cost of having no strong Jewish unified brand or narrative. And what little we had was consistently, for decades, hijacked by the enemies of the Jewish people, spreading lies about who we are. And so now you see that. You see that everywhere. You see it in governments, you see it in companies, you see it in the media, you see it in university campuses, you see it at school, you see it everywhere, because it's not isolated to social media anymore. It's gotten into the culture. And I'm That Jew is something that I've been doing for around 10 years, although my advocacy is 20, where the idea is to reclaim the Jewish narrative with stories that land based on real people, content that connects, empathy, reaching out to the middle ground, reaching out to like-minded individuals who are allies and who are not Jewish, and helping regular people like all of us own it. Don't look at me as an activist or as an influencer. I'm not. I have been running a successful branding agency for around 20 years. And on October 7th, I went all in. I just kind of just stopped my work because I felt that this is something that no one else is doing, that no one else is going to do. No one else is going to try and unify all of us through narrative which is why what Noy and I do is so aligned, and which is why partnerships, that's the way to do this. If you can imagine an I'm that Jew, which serves as a narrative for the Jewish people, that all people fighting for the Jewish people, like Noy and so many others, including Ben and all of you, you are that Jew. You are the cavalry. The problem is no one has invested in it. No one has done what our enemies did. But I'm very confident based on, as Noy was saying, the ripple effect and seeing people using I'm That Jew, wearing the merchandise, picking up on the narratives, the workshops that we're building, the films that we're making, using social media as a means to an end, which is for Jewish people and our allies to show up in real life where the work is really important. That's what I'm That Jew is all about. And it's a very, very big vision. There are plans, of course, to continue traveling to America and Canada and probably going to Africa quite soon, and to revisit Canada and Australia and many other countries in Europe as well. And the idea is to grow this one person at a time and to get the necessary funding and investment and understanding that Jewish people need to finally understand that we are dead in the water unless there is a concerted and professional effort with real experts at the forefront and who are committed with passion to changing the narrative game. And though it's an uphill struggle, I'm very confident because I know that when the Jewish people put their mind to something, we're unstoppable. And you can see it. You might not see it, but we see it. And that's what I'm That Jew is all about.
You mentioned investing. What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, I can tell you right now that I'm working on a film with Einat Wilf. Maybe some of you know her, Jewish thought leader. And we're working on a piece that requires money. So we went out and we got money. If you think back to an animation I made shortly after October 7th, where the idea was to unify the Jewish people right now in a time of need, that the state of Israel adopted as one of their official animations, I had to raise money for that. You have to spend money to put out, I don't want to call it content because it's such a vanilla word at this stage. When you need to put out your identity and do it in the right way, it requires strategy, it requires creativity, it requires distribution, it requires production, it requires many, many things. And that's something that we need to invest in with the right people. It's not social media. It's inspiring the army of Jewish people and our allies to do what we need to do. Because if we keep putting facts about Israel out there and we keep waiting for someone else to do it, as opposed to investing in our base, just like Apple did. Apple, Steve Jobs, he didn't just go to the masses. He wanted the population. And he grew his base and he empowered them to talk about Apple, which is what the Palestinians have done. And it's the one thing that we haven't done. And it's so simple. It's so simple to invest in that. It's taking a leap of faith, though, with the right people, because if we don't do that, then what you are seeing in the world will not only continue, but it will get worse and worse and worse. So we need to invest in it.
Okay. How is your organization, I'm That Jew, going to help us reclaim our narrative in that sense?
Sure. Well, I mean, first of all, when I go out, my audience is predominantly the Jewish people. And the reason why it's the Jewish people is because and it's important to work in collaboration. So like for Noy example, spending a lot of time working with building bridges, it doesn't mean that we're not. We are. But just like Trump built his base, or Bibi Netanyahu built his base, or Nike built their base with a certain type of athlete, you're playing the long game. So what you need to have is you have to have a long-term vision and strategy, which includes workshops for kids. Start them while they're young so that they're educated about their identity and about the situation. It needs creative content that cuts through the clutter, that's at a very high level, which engages with people's humanity, as Noy said, and empathy and fact. This isn't something that happens in the middle of the night with the creative. This is something that you need to actively work on and be proactive all the time in putting that out there. It's also going on speaking tours to inspire Jewish people to physically come together and to have those community discussions that lead them after the meeting to actually wanting to be involved, wanting to do something, as opposed to some panel event where you go there, you listen, you go home, and you never do anything again. So you need to galvanize. And I'm That Jew is geared around raising awareness through galvanization of spirit and sweat. And unifying. The nice thing about I'm That Jew is anyone can be I'm That Jew. Everyone on this call is I'm That Jew because you define who you are. You own your narrative, and people respect that. Your enemies respect it, by the way. Your allies and potential allies respect it. And there is no better feeling of self-empowerment for Jewish people who are able to walk into a room and say, I'm Jewish. So I'm That Jew is all about that. And for the first year, what we're actually trying to do for 2026 is raise a certain amount of money that would allow us to get organized as we continue to do the speaking tours, work on the literature, make the films, go from over 200,000 followers to double that so that we can keep feeding our people with what they need to say in a unified fashion, which is based in humanity and our values.
Right. Calmly.
Calmly.
Right. So, good. I'm going to turn it back to Noy. Noy, you mentioned something very interesting. I mean, I talked about yesterday on our Frontline series what ChatGPT says about the history of Hamas, for example. It was so simple. I said, how many wars have there been that were perpetrated by Hamas? And it said, well, it depends how you define it. I remember going to Israel in 2005 or 2006, and a rocket had just landed in a playground across the fence, okay, in a preschool. Okay, that's not war, apparently. There was a war in 2008. I'm just going to go to it here. 2008, the Gaza War. 2012, Operation Pillar of Defense. 2014, the Gaza War, Operation Protective Edge. 2021, often referred to as an 11-day war. And then we have the 2023 to the present. That's at least 5 major wars. I don't know that most of us know this, right? And then I said, to chat, how was Hamas democratically elected? Let me see my question here. How is this terrorist organization democratically elected, and what was their platform? Okay, it was January of 2006, internationally monitored and widely regarded as a free and fair, at least procedurally, election. 77% of voters showed up. What was their platform? Well, I'm just going to highlight, well, they talked about anti-corruption, social welfare, resistance to Israel's occupation, which I don't understand because Israel pulled out in 2005, dead and alive, every Jew. They maintained their commitment to armed resistance against Israel, refusing to recognize Israel's right to exist and rejecting the Oslo Accords. Sounds pretty bad. Let me see here. They further go on to, they just, decided to give us the charter that we know about. The original charter in 1988 was openly anti-Semitic and called for Israel's destruction, framing the conflict as a religious war. Okay, do people know this? Do people know, or are we just ignoring the facts? Noah, you mentioned about confusion. If people aren't willing to listen to facts, what do we do?
If you look at the strategy that Israel has been using, a lot of the hasbara, if we want to call it, the advocacy has been facts. This happened in, the San Remo conference was in this year, and the Balfour Declaration, and Israel was given a state, so it belongs to us. I mean, the human part isn't really there, and from experience, and I think Eitan can agree, when you're speaking to someone and they either disagree with you or they don't know, spitting facts to them isn't going to help at all. You need to know how to speak to them, how to communicate to them. You need to know how to open the door so they will feel heard and then you will feel heard. People always remember how you made them feel and not what you said. If you think about favorite book, for example, okay? Everyone think of their favorite book over here. Can anyone here recite one full page of their favorite book of all time? No. Can you recite a paragraph of your favorite book of all time? Probably not. What about a sentence? Throw out a sentence. Maybe there's a couple people here, but the point here is that you don't remember what was in your favorite book because you don't like it. You enjoyed how that book made you feel, and that's exactly how advocacy is. You need to approach it in the right way. So these facts, yes, that they're important, but people don't really remember the exact facts. People in about, if the hostages, God willing, will come home soon, people won't remember all the things that happened. They'll remember how that Jewish person made them feel when they spoke up with a conflict, and it can either lead to a positive outcome or a negative outcome.
Yeah, amazing.
100%.
Well, thank you for sharing. You also said earlier something interesting was that I don't know if it was instead of answering a question, answer a question with a question, something like that. Is that?
I think yesterday,
not quite.
Yesterday in our session, I think it's kind of like a tool. One thing is to watch someone's truth unravel. You can ask them a lot of questions instead of providing answers. You can ask them questions. Like if you talk about how many 100,000 people have been killed in Gaza. Okay, where did you get that information from? Well, from Gaza. Well, who in Gaza? The health authorities. Which health authorities? I don't know. Well, who runs them? Hamas. You keep asking, and then you say, well, what is Hamas? And you can go further and further and further. And that was about opening the questions. But I think that the main point is we don't need to hide who we are. And I think that's what I'm trying to build with I'm That Jew. I want to be able to walk into a room and to be Jewish openly. And it's an opening to a conversation, a respectful conversation, unless you met with real hate. And I found that in doing what I do for the past many years, and specifically in the last 2 years, is that it's mostly overwhelming love and acceptance when you state that you're Jewish. But there is a lot of confusion. But imagine a world in which narratives were not hijacked, when the word Zionism was not misconstrued, or genocide didn't lose its meaning, or apartheid was really what apartheid meant when it was originally defined, or colonialism. When we allow people to take over the existing words that are defined as what they are, and we don't push back against that, as Jewish people talking about who we are, and as Israeli people talking about who we are, but if you allow that trend to happen, then that will ultimately affect your culture in your country. And it's only by speaking about these things with our Jewish values intact and coming from that place through empathy and humanity and reason and facts, and not just what we say, but how we say it. Unless we start doing that and fighting for that on the individual level, then the West as we know it will not continue to be the West as we know it. So we have to get people to understand that. And it's not like giving money to a bulletproof vest, which is important, or a drone. To invest in people learning how to speak so that they can defend their identity, which will one day come and bite their children's education in the ass when they're 11 or 12-year-old in school. That is absolutely mandatory. And that is what I'm trying to do. I know that that is what Noy is trying to do, and like-minded other advocates, but not everyone. We're trying to build something bigger and for the long run. And in order to do so, we need people to understand just how serious it is. And if I may say one last thing, the numbers are very promising. The numbers of the impact, the data that we're getting is very, very promising. It needs to be scaled. That's what needs to happen. And for that, we need support.
Just before you go ahead, Ben, the strategy that Eitan is speaking about is an amazing strategy. It's literally used by FBI hostage negotiators. I just put a link in the chat so you can see what Eitan was speaking about. But it's AOC. She's in an interview, and the interviewer is doing exactly what Eitan just said, asking questions. She doesn't know. She doesn't say anything about the conflict, but she's just asking questions and questions. And these are the types of things that we need to teach our Jewish students, our Jewish advocates, our Jewish, doesn't matter what age they are, our allies, to be able
Young.
to stand up. Eitan is saying that everyone should be able to say, I'm a Jew, I'm a Zionist. I believe that, and I say it.
Right.
But in today's world, it can be, not everyone is like you, Ben, unfortunately. But so,
Right.
at Columbia University, with all due respect, it's sometimes scary to have that sticker, and it shouldn't. But if everyone has that sticker, and if everyone wears that I'm the Jew shirt, and if everyone is collaborating with their Christian friends that they just met and their Muslim friends and whoever, and like Zionism isn't such a bad word, then we've definitely made a much bigger step than what has been going on for the past, 25, 30 years.
Think about it like
Right.
this, if I may, just one last comment. Instead of one person going out and trying to speak to 1,000 people, 10 of whom might listen, what I'm trying to do is go out and speak to 100 people, 100 Jewish people. 70% of them, by the end of the meeting, will go out and fight for the Jewish people. And I think that that's kind of like the mindset that that we need to start doing. We need to galvanize our base and our troops and our people, so that the Jewish people will speak up, and also, of course, our allies and people who are confused and who don't know. But it's only by showing up and knowing the fact and how to speak as well.
Speaking of allies, I brought one today. He's from my team. We happen to be what I like to call a pro-Semitic company, because if we could have anti-Semitic, we get a pro-Semitic, right? So George, if you could come off mute here, and there you are. George Ukraine, he left Lvov probably when you were 19 or 20 years old?
23. Hi.
23.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, we've always been shared so much about our experience. I was like totally following the Ukrainian war or the Russian war on Ukraine, from the beginning, every day. And now I follow the war in Israel every day. Tell us about the Ukrainian community, what they think in general. Obviously, it's not, there's diversity among thoughts,
Sure.
But tell us what the community thinks in general, why people care about Gaza, but somehow forgot about Ukraine, the worst war since World War II.
You brought an excellent point, Ben, because, in my opinion, many people I know and many experts, there are some common actors behind the situation, that, in Ukraine was faced with the same predicament, how to deliver the message. Nobody heard about them. To large extent, it was dominated by by Russia, by their narrative. So this is an excellent, very informative for me meeting. I just want to bring a few perspectives. So when Russia blew up Kakhovka Dam, and it's the largest reservoir of fresh water in 23. There was like 5 trillion gallons of water. It killed 10 tons of fish. 700,000 people were feeding from that reservoir, and it was a massive ecocide. And what did we hear from the West? I mean, kind of a shrug, just reports. People were, just quietly complaining about it. There was no mass protest, no flotilla going to Kherson. Nobody gave a damn. But then when we see completely opposite, what's going on with Gaza, and in many people can bring up the connection that Russia was clearly losing the globally war on Ukraine. It was losing it in informationally. It was losing it the war of public opinion, and they had to institute something. And is it a coincidence the October 7th massacre happened on Putin's birthday? I mean, not too many people know about it, but isn't that if it's not symbolic, I don't know what it is. I mean, they were hosting the Hamas leaders there. They're pushing their propaganda, and they clearly won. They were able to deflect the global opinion all of a sudden from this most brutal conflict that's going on in Europe in 70 years, and completely flip the narrative. So I think in thinking about the message, it's also important to know who are the actors who are perpetrating this informational warfare, and clearly they're common actors, that they've been dominating the info waves, and it's startling to people in Ukraine how the table shifted and everybody's sort of wrapped themselves in Hamas flag, and then just went on offensive. It's just unbelievable.
I think that what
So
right now what we're going through, if I may, is when it comes to geopolitics. First of all, I couldn't agree more. And there's a book that you might want to read by General MacArthur. He was an advisor to Trump, and he wrote a book called Battlegrounds about Iran, China, and the influence of Russia, and how to bring down the West or the culture. What we're trying to do, and it's very important. It's important to have that knowledge. When it comes to identity, though, when it comes to the identity of a people being hijacked, because the identity of the Ukrainians has not been hijacked. It's a physical war, and there are values on either side for or against that war. But what we're talking about is something that looks like a geopolitical war, something that looks like a physical war, but it's actually an ideological war. And the people who are fighting it for the world are quite literally the Jewish people. If the identity of the Jewish people goes down, and the Jewish people are known, at least not in an upside down world, as having contributed with morality and moral clarity and hard work and ethics. This is what the Jewish people have contributed for thousands of years to the world. If the world allows the Jewish narrative to fail and allows it to be warped into a conversation about land, when it isn't that at all, then we have a lot to lose, which is why also going back to educating people, whether it's what Noy is doing or what I'm trying to do with strengthening the identity of the Jewish people, it has an effect on our allies as well. It has an effect on anyone who wants to see the West remain as it is, as opposed to the tribalism of the Middle East. I agree with everything that you're saying. I'll drop a comment in the links about that book as well, which I think that you'll find very interesting,
thank you,
George. And thank you for being on the call.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate your perspective, George. Tell us a little bit, George, why you see, we've often spoken about, like, we feel that we're fighting the same authoritarians. It's a different war, but in many ways there are similarities. Do you think that we're kind of, Ukraine and Israel is kind of fighting the free world war for the free world?
No doubt. Absolutely. That's because if Israel or Ukraine, falls, then the message is that everything goes, and the moral clarity dims, effectively on that moment. So to me, I think it's crucial to have a unified front to push back on this, and You have to know the perpetrators of that, who people who are pulling the strings, and you have to go to the source. Because all of a sudden the narrative flipped, it coincided with the spread of TikTok and CPP fueled algorithms and all of that stuff, hitting at the right point, the right masses, they were just, all of a sudden flipping en masse into this anti-Semitic, hysteria. And to me, that was totally shocking how quickly that was possible to. But with technology, the only hope I see that TikTok is going to be at least absorbed with Oracle and the acquisition, and that will be, the message will be contained. But you're fighting an informational warfare. It's a very different warfare. It's a asymmetric war. It's a war of public opinion. It's the same that Ukraine is fighting, and then you have to keep the message on top. You can't let yourself being drowned with the propaganda, with imagery, with the fakes and things like that. And that's exactly why I'm saying that, because that's exactly the style of KGB. They've been doing that for decades. That's their know-how, how to instigate chaos and spread misinformation, doubt in clarity of the message. And that's when things fail and people start doubting themselves and doubting what they stand for. That's when the other side wins. So you have to deliver a clear perspectives, and that's what I think is what you're doing is very important. So good luck with the effort, of course, and we're with you.
Thank you. Well,
what is it? It's Slavi Ukraina. How about Ukraini, right? Is that the?
Yes, very good, man. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Looking ahead, thank you, George, so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Looking ahead, Noy and Eitan, what gives you hope?
I think this gives me a lot of hope when we meet people and we see that people understand. But hope is not enough. I think after meeting 6,000 people in 3 weeks, and you feel how devastated and scared they are, it's not enough to just hope. They give me hope, but what really gives me hope is seeing that hope turning into action. And that's what gives me hope. What gives me hope is the reaction to I'm That Jew, how people want to get involved, how people are supporting us, how we are seeing the numbers go up. There's a lot of stuff that you see online, but you don't see the good stuff. And there's a lot of good stuff happening when you start doing things, when you start building things, when you start creating things for good, when you start bringing people together. I can tell you the amounts of messages I get a day, and I'm sure Noy does as well, that are very, very hopeful. But I want to say one thing, which is we've been in a 2-year, everyone hands on deck, after decades of the silence of the Jewish people. And I'm going to say something which isn't pleasant to say, but it's necessary to say. The hostages return home. The war ends, the physical war. And then what?
That's so simple.
Who continues? Who continues to speak up in an organized fashion? This is the thing that I call the apathy of the Jewish people. People need to continue. And that is why, and if I can go back to point, Ben, I think it's very important to just not be shy about it. We need your support. We need people to understand that this takes a lot of work and energy, and you want good people to do it and to continue building the masses. You don't want it to stop, because as soon as it does, we lose momentum and we'll be in another 20, 30 years of no narrative again, because every Jew on the planet was just like, someone else will do it. we need to do this, our children need us to do this. And hope to me is with action. When I see people going to action, that gives me hope.
For me,
thank you,
it,
Eitan, for sharing. Go ahead, Noe.
yeah, for me, I feel like I've cracked the code in what works for me when I'm able to empower non-Jewish allies and have them stand along the Jewish people who are able to whether it's going to a rally together, praying for each other, whether you have a non-Jewish ally standing up for the Jewish people, which ends up empowering that one Jewish person who's quiet. For me, it works, and of course, like like this advocacy is my career. Like this is what I do all day, every day. And I agree with Eitan. We need your support. This unfortunately the government doesn't fund us like every other conspiracy theory out there. But I just want to strengthen Eitan's point, which is what I've been saying since day one. No one talks about the day after. Like the preparing for the next war starts today. Ben, you mentioned the past wars we've had since 2006. There's going to be another war. This is 100% true. Look at history. Sorry, 99.9% true. Every 5 years there's been a war. Israel has been at war since it became a state. Okay? If we don't do the work now, the next time there's going to be a war, we're going to find ourselves in the same spot. I don't think I'm a genius. I literally took what the other side is doing, which they've been very successful at doing, and copying it. I'm going to other communities and strengthening them to strengthen us. Why on October 8th did you have every single non-Palestinian standing with them? You had Koreans for Palestine. You had this for Palestine, gays for Palestine, Chinese for Palestine, tall people. You had every single thing for Palestine. But that's because they've been doing the work for the past 25 years. They've been supported and they've been funded for the past 25 years. So it may take a couple of years until we get even close to where they're at. But the work starts now and not when the next war happens.
I have kind of a hard question to ask, Noe. We have a professor here. We have a couple of professors here today, Carlos and Phil. We have a professor here from the campus where Charlie Kirk was just murdered. Dr. Philip Gordon is on my team and was said, man, that's where I used to walk every day. Do you fear for your life in what you do, Noe?
I'll be honest with you. I think that when I came out of Gaza after seeing things that I hope no one else here sees, coming out of a literal war zone, coming back to the US, going to these protests, and I promise you, going to these different situations was scarier than being in combat. In combat, I felt protected. I had my team around me, my family. I had the people praying for me. But when you go into these situations and people think that Zionist means killing, all when they're totally wrong and they're on you and you feel powerless, that's scary. Now, I have 15 speakers that I send out, not, of course, the scale that the legend Charlie Kirk was doing, but they're still going to universities with a table that said, I'm an IDF soldier, ask me a question. They're still going to Dearborn, Michigan with a sign that says, I'm a Zionist, ask me a question. The security at the university isn't going to do much. Part of the money that I am raising for my organization is going to security so that my speakers will feel free and will feel safe when they go and speak to people out there. I'm sure Eitan has the same thing. You scroll back to when Eitan went to Canada. He was surrounded by a mob of I don't know how many hundred or thousand students. And although they're just
400.
students, look at what happened at Charlie Kirk. Okay, it was a crowd where anyone could go to. So, I really would prefer, as weird as it sounds, fighting in Gaza than going to these situations in around the world. But that's where the real battle is.
Yeah. So basically, you're telling us it's scary out there.
Try
Right.
doing work for them. I'm sure you'll go back to your normal job.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
exactly.
it's not fun going to mobs and especially wearing this. But the idea is to strengthen by showing up in the real world, and if you can film it, of course. But yeah, it is scary. It's scary, especially after Charlie Kirk. It's scary. But what do you do with your fear? What do you do with it? Do you let it paralyze
Confront it.
you, or do you
No.
do you think about how it's getting in the way of what you should be able to do? That's what I'm trying to do, and Noy is trying to do, and we're trying to show that to other people so that they get on board as well. And there's no better way of doing that than literally showing up. But yes, it's scary, and I'm married, I have kids, and we're also talking about more security, which costs money.
Right.
But it's needed.
Right.
It's literally
needed.
existential. Yes.
Well, we've run out of time today, and I'm going to leave us with a call to action since you said you want action, Eitan. If you're inspired and want to help, Noy and Eitan each have 501c3 organizations, and should you decide to support, the Altman Family Foundation will match you dollar for dollar. In fact, I'll tell you our progress. We're raising $180,000, and before today, we already reached 50,000. We broke 50,000 this morning. So we're happily working towards our goal. Anything is appreciated, no pressure at all. I'll send a follow-up email with this recording if you wish to share it. Thank you all. Thank you, Eitan. Thank you, Noy. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And Hag Sameach.
For having us.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you. May the hostages come home soon.
Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Ben.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.